Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, it's Van Diesel, back with Card 5 Vanguard deck profile. So hope you guys enjoyed. Don't like, comment, subscribe, and so sorry. This time we are covering DZ Set 2 Varga Dragres. Sorry if I go through this one a little bit fast. The day I'm recording this, Thursday, March 28th at 4:29 p.m. So much is happening. I pretty much got to get this done in 22 minutes, and typically I do get these done in 22 minutes, but my heartbeat is pretty much going at 1,000 miles per hour. So let's go and start, shall we, and see what we got, because honestly, this deck with the support that was kind of generic that we got in DZ Set 2. I felt like cooking up this really aggressive deck. You know I don't use, if you've been around this channel long enough, you know I don't use slang unless I'm actually serious about something, so this time I'm actually serious. But this deck is kind of 50-50, so what we got? First up, we have our Energy Generator. It's a ride deck crest. You might want to ride deck crest in your ride deck. Auto ride deck, when you would ride, put this card into your crest on. Every 1 second, energy charge 3. Then continues to be up to 10 energies, and auto beginning of your ride phase, energy charge 3, and then act once per turn, energy about 7 to draw a card. All around pretty solid because, you know, every turn you're getting 3 free energy. And while yes, this deck typically has more cards to take up energy than other decks, aka you have 2 main cards to take up energy, you are still able to fluctuate between them very well, and not to mention the fact that one of them that does take up energy ends up increasing your hand, so you never really have time to use that energy blast 7 to draw a card unless you brick hard, but you are pretty much always going to be energy blasting to draw a card, or at least get some type of advantage. So all around nice card to have, very solid. Then we have our starter in Heated Blade R-Dart, so grade 0 boost, 5k social 6k base, auto reply for second draw card, standard starter, nothing too special, to free draw if you go second. None of the ride line really requires R-Dart, but like I do with the faded ones and just like every ride line in general, if it's a part of the actual ride line, I tend to run it, and it also fits the theme. It's a Dragon Warrior, why not run it? I also just like the fact that he has a cool sword, and I like his hair a lot, and his like little sleek tail, so one of R-Dart in the ride deck, but it can be any starter you want. Then we have our triggers. First, we're on our over trigger and Dragon Deity, King of Resurgence, Dragveda. Grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power. Over trigger, over trigger in your deck. When revealed as a trigger, move that card, draw a card, choose one moves. It gets plus 1 mana for the turn, and if you revealed it during your drive check, activate its additional effect, which you get to choose one of your vanguards and stand it. This card has been the bane of me and D so far, and the reason why I say this is because in the original deck profile, the first set of not the first set of Dragveda, the first set of Varga, I mentioned a lot that in premium you can just rely on this to keep staying in the Vanguard and get drive checks. Well, it turns out Dragveda heard me, and so far in most of the matches that I've had with this version of the deck, I keep sacking the over after I use Varga's skill to basically mean he'll stand at the end of the battle regardless and lose 2 drives, and before I use the divine skill, meaning I'm just wasting drives and attacks at that point, which sucks. But like, as I said in that deck profile multiple times, if you truly believe you're going to flip over Dragveda, do not use the skill of Varga, or at least the first skill, because it's only going to make you lose drives and make you waste CB. Instead, bank it on Dragveda. If you are confident it's going to pop up, stand the Vanguard, swing again. If you can proc the Divine Skill, proc the Divine Skill. Now you got an extra 4 drives that turn, and now when he attacks again, you can then use the first skill, give him 10k, kill the front row, he stands at the end of the battle, drive -2. All around Dragveda is pretty solid. It gives more Vanguard attacks in deck with already a lot of Vanguard attacks. If you are confident when you're going to pull it, you can basically auto win the game, or at least guarantee your opponent's not killing you that next turn unless you brick hard in your drive checks. All around a very solid card. One of you can run Asphoria, or not Asphoria, you can run Asphoria recycling or Volna for more rear guard attacks, but yeah, Vanguard attacks are the way to go. Then we have our normal triggers. Run 3 copies of Flareveil Dragon, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 4k base, continues guard circle. If your opponent's Vanguard is a grade 3 or greatest, 5k shield, you know 10k shield. Since to have it's a draw trick, so I'll increase the hand. The last version had 4 of, and I didn't see crits that often in that deck. So I put the crits up by 1 and dropped Flareveil by 1. Now we have the exact opposite problem, where I have hand problems now, or at least getting the cards I wanted to hand. However, I see crits as often as I want to. Like, there's no balance with them. It's I either have 1 extra crit and I get all the crits I want, or I have 1 extra draw and I get all the hand cards I want, but whichever one I didn't pick is lacking in that area for some arbitrary reason. Either way, I've chosen 3 of Flareveil because I want aggro, and aggro works with me. And then we have 8 crits, 4 Wicked Beast Sunagosity, grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power. This can really be any crit you want for Sunagosity because it came out in the trial deck for, or this quick start deck for Triumph Dragon, and as we all know, the triggers in the starter were all supposed to be like precursors to the respective ride lines, so I might as well run Sunagosity in this deck, and then 4 copies of Burning Flow Dragon, grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 4k power, critical trigger, auto rear guard of the battle, this boost it, put it to soul, choose a music, 2k for the turn. that going to soul would do nothing. This deck does not soul blast whatsoever, but being able to give 2k to something might honestly make the difference if you are actively trying to push your opponent down. So for Burning Flow, it is nice for that reason alone. Then we have for Gentle Breeze, Dragon, Dino Breeze, Grid, so a boost 50k shield, 5k power, standard heal, nothing about it. You can really run any heal if you want. I just choose Dino Breeze because, again, like the critical trigger, it was in the quick start deck, so might as well run it for theming. So in total, we have 8 crits, 3 draws, and 4 heals for pressure. If you want to increase more hand cards, you're like me, where the one copy made the difference, then go ahead and add an extra copy of Flavor, because I tell you what, it genuinely made the difference, that one copy, between me having every hand card I wanted to me having every crit I wanted. So, take that as you will. I choose the crits. Then move on to our grade 1s. First one, 3 copies of Battle Monk of Raging Flames Rokusei. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, one of our new cards. Auto when she's placed on the rear guard circle. If you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Varga in the card name, your opponent cannot intercept till end of turn. All around pretty solid, because this card alone, regardless of your opponent's at grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, it doesn't matter. The second is placed, if your Vanguard's a Varga, you nullify intercepts, which is so powerful because typically, when you're attacking with a unit that's going to kill the front row on swing, your opponent's obviously going to intercept beforehand when you're attacking with your rear guards. Well, Rokusei shuts us on entirely, so that nullifies like 5 to 10, maybe even to 20k guarding power on her own, which is great. And then auto rear guard, when any player's unit is retired from a front or rear guard circle, same column as her during your turn, regardless if it's your rear guard, your opponent's rear guard, doesn't matter as long as it's in the front row and it was in the same column as her. If you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard Varga in the card name, retire her to draw a card. All around pretty solid. She shuts down intercepts, she possibly can get you more hand cards and replace herself, which is good, and not to mention the fact that you pretty much always put her behind the rear guards and shut down everything. She's a very good grade 1. None of her skills cost anything, and the only cost she has is just retire herself, which she'll probably get retired anyways if you moved her to the front row. So Rokusei is a very solid grade 1. I would run her at a 4 of, but as I experimented with the crits and the draws here, one copy of the card that is at a 4 of in her place makes the difference of whether or not who I see actually, because I see her decent enough at 3, but the next card I'm about to show off, if Rokusei's at 4, I see her all the time, but this next card at 4, if I don't run it at 4, I don't see it at all. So that would be 4 copies of Strong, Sharp, Dragon, Guys 4, Dragon. So, or not Guys 4, Dragon, just Guys 4 in general. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto back row rear guard circle once per turn. When your opponent's rear guard's retired during your turn, stand this unit and it'll get plus 2k for that turn. Okay. This deck does not retire during main phase. What you do is you either lock down your opponent's intercepts with this, or because intercepting is not counted as retiring from rear guard, they just intercept anyways, and then you just hope that your opponent doesn't leave their entire front row open. So when you boost this with Varga on the first swing, and Varga kills the front row, if they killed at least one of your opponent's units, Guy Sport will stand at 2k for the turn, and then you get 2k extra for Varga, meaning Varga is swinging for 33k on the first swing as long as one thing died. So all in all, Guy Sport's pretty useful. The reason why Guy Sport's at 4 and not a Rokusei at 4, which is I honestly recommend Rokusei being at 4, is because, as I said before, if I don't run Guy Sport at 4, it doesn't show up at all. I think it was on camera that 3 of them ended up in damage zone back to back to back. Like, I actually have to run 4 to see any copies of them. While Rokusei at 3, I see at least 1. So, it's a greater evil of the two. So 4 of Guys 4. If you see Guys 4 consistently enough without the 4, then yeah, definitely take Rokusei up to 4. But Guys 4, very nice card to have in back center, adds pressure, makes so Vanguard has more boosting power and just more power overall. It's a good 4 of. And then we have 4 copies of Battle Monk of Raging Flames Kofu. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, contains rear guard circle. If your Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater Varga in his card name, this unit will get flats of power and 5,000 shield as well, active on both players' turns. So 13k base power, 10k base shield is pretty solid. The reason why I value this over both of these two is because if worse comes to worse and you break and your hand is either all triggers or you have to come back from a situation where you have no hand cards, you're pretty much going to want to call Kofu over either of these two, because at least Kofu can hit. So all around pretty solid. It does have extra defensive power if you really needed to. Again, Varga never really... This deck does not have problems defending, or at least not what I consider problems defending. What I mean by hand cards problems is I mean, like, I just have low hand cards, but that's typically because all of them are going to board. I'm playing actively aggressively, and the only draw engine is Rokusei, and the draw trigger that actively one copy makes the difference of if it shows up or not. Either way, though, Kofu's a nice card, 13k base, 10k shield, acts for pressure, like worst case scenario, it can hit Vanguard or rear guards, and it can also defend you if need be, so 4 of. Then we have 4 copies of RPG, and that's Guardian Monk of Raging Flames Monju. Grade 1, boost, 0 shows, okay, base, continuous Sentinel, may have only 4 Sentinels in deck, on put a guard circle, choose one units, it cannot be hit in the battle, and if your hand has 2 or more cards in it, choose a card from your hand discarded, standard RPG. Nothing too special about it. Basically means if this is only one of the cards in your hand placed on guard circle, you don't have to go with great, because that means you can be as aggressive as you want in the early game. In this deck, you want to put your opponent to 4 damage as fast as possible, especially if you're going second, because Varga's Divine Skill specializes it has to swing into a grade 3 3-grade unit. If you are going second, your Divine Skill has 1 turn earlier access than your opponent might have, unless they're playing something like Raziel or Welstra. To some extent, Blagdemire can pull off its Divine Skill on its first grade 3 turn. It just takes a hell of a lot of luck to do it. But no, the PG is definitely helpful when you're trying to aggro out with, like, maybe you call Kofu's early, or Guy's Forts or Rokuseis to pressure out your opponent, and then your opponent counterattacks you back because you have low hand cards amount. Moju works out for that. So, that's the benefit of also having low hand cards, or would be a benefit if Moju stopped hitting the damage zone 24/7, but that is what it is. You can really run any PG you want, either Twin Buckler, Plasma Catapult, or even this thing, but our Sparkle's Projector. I don't know why I keep saying Plasma Catapult, Sparkle Rejector, but I choose to run Moju, even though he hates me, because he was released more close to the time of Varga's release. Even if that's actively getting me killed. But it is what it is for Moju. It's a nice PG. Then we have last grade 1 of the deck, 1 of in the ride deck, none in the main deck of Blanzambar Dragon, grade 1 boost, 5k short, 8k base, auto when road palm by a Boulder-Axe Dragon, calls card to rear guard circle and soul charge 1. Okay, cool, it replaces Self and Soul. Now, like I said earlier, none of this deck uses Soul, but it is a nice resource that you can replace on easy access, and not to mention the fact it calls itself. So worst case scenario, if you are going first and you don't get to aggro your opponent that easily, well, your opponent's at grade 1 and you get a free grade 1 call, so there's that. And then continues rear guard during your turn. If you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard Varga in its card name, it gets plus 2k. If you're going first, you move this to front row. If worst comes to worst, if your hand's a bunch of triggers or cards you don't want to call, and then you beat your opponent with this, and then you swing a Varga, and then you kill it. So there's that. Or it's a 10k booster, or worst comes to worst, in your final turn moments, and you have Kofu or like nothing else to call, you just straight up move Blazonbar to the front row, and then you just swing with whatever you can. Maybe this even kills the Interceptor. Who knows? Either way, Blazonbar is a nice grade 1 to have. It gets out on the board early. It can pressure out your opponent early as well. And like I said, you want to put your opponent to highest amount of damage as possible, so you can proc off your Divine Skill as fast as possible, and pressure them out as much as possible with 8 crits. So one of Blazonbar in the ride deck, not in the main deck. And 2k skill is not that great, especially when we have better power gainers and or restanders or nullifiers in the case of Rokusei, but being able to get a free call is nice for ride deck tech, so one of. Then we have our grade 2s, 3 copies of Dragres Farheart, who, unlike Flarevel, actually chooses to show up, even though there's one less copy of him in the deck. Believe it or not, Farheart pretty much shows up, almost all of them almost show up all the time. Like, most of the time it's at least 2. Sometimes there's all 3, sometimes it's not all 3, but there's always at least 2. So anyways, Farheart's a grade 2 that's a 5k shield, 10k base, auto and put on guard soak from your hand, discard from your hand while riding from the ride deck, Iron Boss 1, Orange Boss 3, draw a card. Okay, this deck takes up a lot of CB, and if you play it wrong, it can take up a lot of EB, but having basically a free energy charge 3 every turn, making his at least the first cost free, is pretty solid. And not to mention the fact, worst case scenario, you throw it to guard circle, you can use it to increase your hand. That skill saved me one time, so just saying, it's good. And it's a ride deck discard, which is great. And then auto when placed on the rear guard circle. If Persona Road this turn, Iron Boss 1 Orange Boss 3, choose a grade 1 without Sentinel from your drop zone, call it to back row rear guard circle. If you're playing a nuke deck, or maybe you filled up a bunch of your back row with Rokuseis in the early game, and maybe your board presence is not that great, and you Persona Ride, and you need a way to come back from your board being destroyed, go Farheart. Get back a grade 1, and hopefully you have enough CB and EB to do some plays. Either way, nice card for recovery and defensive options. It can help increase your hand card when guarding, help increase your hand cards when discarding from ride deck, and it can help increase your board presence, which did actually win me a game, just not in this deck, but it did win me a game once because it got me an extra rear guard, so 3 of Farheart, solid grade 2. I love them a lot. And then we have 4 copies of Dragres Shura. The only reason this deck has a CB problem, I blame Shura simply because her ability procs the second your opponent gets to grade 3, and while Varga, yes, always eats up 1 CB a turn, and 2 if you use the Divine Skill, there are a lot of decks that Vanguards do that, but it's the rear guards that really make the difference, and when the rear guard's that good, kind of puts in the CV problem. Anyways, Shura, grade 2 set 5k shield, 10k base, auto rear guard when she attacks into anything by energy passing 2, she'll get plus 5 times power for that battle, and then choose up to one of your rear guards with a different card name from her, and it gets auto when this unit's retired from rear guard circle, put it to hand on turn. All around pretty solid. I used that ability to actually benefit from this half of the skill once, and that once made a difference, because I gave it to a crit, and then I bounced the crit, and then I was swung at next turn. If I didn't bounce that crit, I would have died. So all around pretty solid, and weirdly enough, it was actually Sunagosudi, so Sunagosudi did her job. But either way, Shura being able to increase her power, and worst comes to worst if you have to call her early, because you want to be able to play her when your opponent's at grade 3, but say for example you went second and you can't afford to wait, and you want to aggro your opponent down, you can call triggers to the front row, call Shura, swing with the trigger, and then swing with Shura, and then give the trigger the skill not to die, and then swing with the Vanguard, and then you get the trigger back, and you didn't really lose anything. On pretty solid, and she's 15k swinger for that. And then auto when she's retired from the rear guard circle by the ability of your grade 3 or greater Vanguard Varga in his card name. If your opponent's Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater as well, Counter Blast 1 and call the card to rear guard circle, and she'll get plus 10k for that turn. All around pretty solid, because while she does eat into CB, she can call herself, she's a 20k, and that means you get more attacks with Varga because while the Vanguard swings at least twice a turn, you now have Shura, and you possibly have another rear guard, so 4. Not to mention the fact she's not a hard once per turn, so if you want to drop all your CB in a turn, you can technically get 5. And if we proc the Divine Skill on that, 6. So you're always guaranteed at least 3 with Varga, probably 4, regardless if you play Shura or not. Yeah, regardless if you play Shura or not, you're probably guaranteed 4. Shura makes 5, and then if you Divine Skill, 6, and if you play double Shura by God's Miracle, I think 7. So all around, Shura's a very solid grade 2. She gets you rear guard call, she gets 10k, she can bounce a rear guard back to hand. The only downside is she applies to the CB problem, but you know, she's what she is. She's a nice 4. What's not to like about her? And we have our last grade 2 in the deck, 1 of in the ride deck, 2 of in the main deck, and that's Boulder Axe Dragon, grade 2 and set 5k shield, 10k base, auto rolled upon by a grade 3 card Varga in his card name, call this card to rear guard circle, and then auto van when this, or auto rear when this unit attacks into a Vanguard. If you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard Varga in the card name, this unit gets 5,000 power for that battle. At the end of the battle, retire this unit, draw a card. That effect is mandatory, so whether you want to or not, he's going to be swinging for 15k, and he will die at the end of the battle to draw a card. But on the bright side, not only does he increase his power to pretty much hit a grade 3 rear guard or a grade 3 Vanguard if they don't pull a trigger, but also in the sense of he gets you hand cards and replaces himself, so even when Varga swings, he's not dying, but even if he was, he just replaced himself anyways. So all around, Boulder Axe is good for that reason alone. Technically, you don't need Boulder Axe. If you want to shift those 2 copies, one into Farheart and one into Rokusei, you can. But I like to have Boulder Axe, and so I don't have to call Shura half the time, because apparently Shura really loves to show up when I can't use her and make me feel like I have to, because it's either that or call triggers or don't do anything. So having Boulder Axe as a way to replace itself and get draws and still be aggro in the early game is nice. So I like to run in the 2 of the main deck, but if you feel like you don't need that, then go ahead and cut those 2 copies for Farheart and Rokusei. But I like to have the 2 main deck copies, so 2 of them. Then we have our grade 3s, run 3 copies of our very new and powerful order that is for some reason generic, and that is Drag Resonance. Grade 3, normal order. Choose every Vanguards, and it gets auto Vanguard once per turn. When this unit stands, all your front row units get plus 10,000 power for that turn until end of turn. This entire deck was made off of this card alone. That's the reason why Gaze Ford is here. I promise you, if it was not for this order, I was not going to put Gaze Ford in. But this card is so good. Because it's a once per turn, yes, but typically, at least 1 unit will be staying alive after Varga murders your front row, and if you Shura, probably 2. Meaning Resonance gives plus 10k not only to the restanding Vanguard who already got plus 10k, but also to your 2 front rear guards, and one of which also got plus 10. Oh wait, if you call Shura as well, also got plus 10, so pretty much your entire front row got plus 20 off of 1 restand. All around, Drag Resonance is a very solid card. Sadly, it's only a once per turn, so you can't like proc it twice off Divine Skill turn, but hey, a 10k is a 10k, and that definitely adds to the pressure of the deck, especially when the Vanguard's being boosted by Guys for. And if worst case scenario and you only have front more units, well, that's a Resonance for. It just adds more numbers. So all around, a very solid order to have. It's extremely generic, and it works with pretty much the entirety of Dragon Empire, especially because we have Drag Veda over here. So all around, Drag Resonance works really well in this deck. It's a nice 3-0 for that. Then we have 4 copies of Obscure Glaive Dragon, grade 3, 200% right, 13k base, continues front or rear guard circle during your turn. If you do not have another front or rear guard with the same card name as this unit, it cannot be retired by card effects, and it gets plus 10 power, which is great. So, you know, 23k swinger that can't be killed by card effects. Well, looks like we found a loophole to Varga, who also gets a free 10k off of Resonance without having to cost CB, no offense, Shura. And then the other skill is continues rear guard. If you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Varga in his card name, this unit gets boost. I've seen one player do that in my entire life. Granted, I don't watch Vanguard videos that often anymore, but outside of the anime. But cool. I mean, 13k boosters, 13k booster, and it obviously doesn't affect the first half because the first half just requires you to have not have another copy in the front row. So you can have 2 in the same column. Well, as long as there's not another one in the front row one is going to get 23k base and is going to have a 13k booster behind it. All around, Glaive is a very solid grade 3. It acts for nice attacking pressure, and it's just a very good card to have. I like to only have 1 in the front row. That is half because of its skill and half because the deck literally only gives me 1 copy. What I've learned is, in this deck at least, if I don't run something at 4, I am automatically so much less likely to see it. Like, not just by the fact of, oh, obviously I have 1 less copy, so I'm obviously going to see it less. No, like, in a genuine scale, if it's not at 4 copies, I will genuinely struggle to see it. Because apparently this deck loves to draw triggers whenever the hell it feels like it, so yeah, that's what I have to deal with half the time. Either way, though, very solid grade 3 is a nice 4 of. And then finally, we have our main grade 3 in the deck, 1 of in the ride deck, 3 of in the main deck, of Faded 1 of Unparalleled. Varga Dragres. Unparalleled, at least in set 1, was more or less true. Unparalleled in this version, well, when I'm constantly drawing triggers, kind of true, kind of not. When it aggroes, it's very true, but when it's not aggroing. Also, when it keeps flipping the over after I use the first skill, not really that unparalleled. Either way, 2 skills, auto Vanguard once per turn when this unit attacks into a Vanguard. Current boss will retire all of your and your opponent's front rear guards, and this unit will get plus 10,000 power for that turn. And then at the end of that battle, stand this unit and it gets drive -2 for the turn. So, restand, loses all of its drives. On the bright side, murders the front row, so if your opponent didn't intercept in time, well, they lose their interceptors, and they didn't have interceptors at all, well, fuck them. And Rokusei automatically asks this by shutting down the interceptors for the turn. Still a very good card. And then not to mention the fact there's only a CB1 to do all of this, and like, you know, Glaive can't be killed, Boulder Axe kills itself, and then Shura can call itself back. So most of your units you're going to have in the front row for this pretty much don't die, technically speaking, or unaffected by that effect. And the ones that do die, well, typically it's going to be Blenzambar, who you move to the front row if you went first to pressure out your opponent, and it's fine if Blenzambar dies. That's what Resonance is for, so you don't need a back row to rush. You know, Rokusei, who might die anyways, and Guy's Fort, well, Guy's Fort, you call it if you call it a booster behind it, maybe Kofu, but either way, though, typically you're not going to lose much doing that, and you're going to make your opponent hurt a lot more than you do, especially if Guy's Force behind this and something did retire, because that means the Vanguard's automatically swinging for 33k by just a simple CB. And then Divine Skill, Auto Vanguard. At the end of the battle, this unit attacked a grade 3 or greater unit. Now, technically speaking, if your opponent for some reason had a grade 3 on the rear guard and they were at grade 2 and they were at 4 damage and they meet the other requirements for the skill, technically speaking, yes, Varga could proc while the opponent's at grade 2 because it doesn't specify it has to attack a grade 3 Vanguard. However, unless your opponent's superior calls a grade 3 to rear guard while they're on grade 2, you're probably only pulling this off when they're at grade 3. But, you know, it's a possibility. Either way, though, if they're at grade 3 and your opponent's damage has 4 more cards in it, and this unit has attacked 2 or more times, technically speaking, if you flip the over and you're confident you are going to flip the over, then you don't have to use this skill, and then you would still meet the requirements for this. But that's a 1 in, like, some amount of odds, so kind of take that as you will. But, Current boss 1 to stand this unit, it gets plus 2 drives for that turn. You may only use Divine Skills total once per fight among all your cards. All around, pretty solid. It's an extra restand. It's more Vanguard attack. Sadly, it does not proc off Drag or Resonance because you probably procced it off either this or the overstand to begin with. But it gets your drive checks back, so you're at least getting 4 drives that turn. Now, if you get lucky, you could swing, pray that you flip the over and not use the first skill, flip the over, so the Vanguard stands, probably is getting a 1 mil on top of it, plus the 10k to front row, and then, you know, so that's 2 drives. Then it swings again, that's another 2 drives. You still don't use this skill, they guard or they don't, doesn't matter. Then use the Divine Skill to stand, and then you swing with that one, that's 4 drives, whether they guard or they don't, doesn't matter, you're now at 8 hand cards. And then you swing again, or at the end of that battle, you counter blast, and then you do the stand, the plus 10k. Then you swing again, you got 10 free hand cards off that. Technically 11 if you count the over. So, plus your first 2 drive. Actually, no, I already counted it in the over. Never mind. So, 10 hand cards. All around, though, Varga, pretty solid. Can attack multiple times. This acts as pressure to where if they are at 4 damage, they're probably having to PG both these attacks, especially with, you know, Resonance boosted Guy's Fort restand column with possible Rokusei shutting down columns and Glaive and or Shura coming down on the opponent's board. Either way, though, Dragres, very solid. Adds pressure, kills former rear guards, constant restands every turn, possibly 3. Hell, maybe even with the over pressuring out as well. Even if it does lose drive checks, I feel like that was the only way for them to balance it, that it had to lose 2 drive checks for the turn. Because I feel like even if it was just for the battle, the fact that they probably assumed that you could flip the over off it, that's fair. So all around though, Dragres is a very solid grade 3, and it's just a nice card. Without further ado, that's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm sorry I rushed through this. I know this video is somehow longer than some of the other ones, so it doesn't necessarily seem like I rushed through it, and I'm sorry that I rushed through a lot of the bits that I normally would have done, simply because I have so much to do in such a little amount of time. So normally I would have like some witty-ish outro or some BS plan, but all I'm going to say is this. Stand, call, undie, maybe kill for draws, restand, stand again, add numbers, beat the shit out of your opponent that they can't really stop. Just keep going, aggro them down. There are a lot, what I've learned from this deck, if you don't run it as a 4, it's probably not going to show up. So take it as you will. Without further ado, I'm going to end this one here. Hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and follow the Twitch. And I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to send up your Vanguards.